Hello everyone. Welcome to SecPod SanerNow product webinar series. Thank you for joining this session in your busy schedule. I hope you're able to hear my voice and do the presentation. If you have any issues, please let us know and we will be happy to work on it. Today the webinar is especially planned for mid-sized enterprises and small medium businesses. And in today's webinar, we will cover how mid-sized enterprises can automate vulnerability management and prevent cyber attacks. Let me introduce the presenters for today's session. I'm Dikshita from the product marketing team, and along with me, we have Smita, one of our lead product specialists.
Hi everyone.
Hi, Smita. Let us take a look at today's agenda. To begin with, we will be covering the major vulnerability management challenges faced by mid-sized organizations, and followed by that, we will be seeing the benefits of automating vulnerability management and how automating vulnerability management will increase the overall efficacy of a security framework. And we have the most important part of today's webinar, that is how SanerNow automates end-to-end vulnerability management. So in this section, Smita will demonstrate us how SanerNow will automate vulnerability management, starting from vulnerability scanning, detection, assessment, prioritization to remediation. This way, you can learn how automating in vulnerability management will help the whole process become seamless and will also increase the overall efficacy of your vulnerability management program. And at the end of the webinar, we will be discussing the questions and answers. So if you have any questions, please raise them then and there. And at the end of the webinar, we will pick up your questions and we will give the answer for those. Let us begin the session now. If we look at mid-sized organizations and small medium businesses, they already have multiple challenges which put their businesses under huge risk. So out of which, one question occurs in my head that if cyber attack should be one of them. And I came across this specific statistics in the recent days, which states that 43% of cyber attacks are aimed at small medium enterprises, but only 14% of small medium businesses are prepared to are prepared to defend themselves. This is a very interesting statistics which really puts the scenario of today's businesses. If we look at the industrial landscape, large organizations are generally equipped with enough resources and right tools to defend themselves from cyber attacks. But if you look at small medium businesses, they are in the crossfire. Because of the lethargicness and as well as the limitation of resources in small medium businesses, attackers have started focusing on small medium businesses as well today and have started releasing a lot of exploits in the recent days. Talking about this, vulnerability management is one important place that small medium businesses has to focus today. If you look at vulnerability management in general itself, it is a very important security measure and plays a crucial role in the whole security program. And today's webinar is going to focus more on vulnerability management and how we can effectively implement this process. So before we go in deep and check out how vulnerability management can be implemented in better way, let us take a look at the top challenges faced by mid-sized enterprises today in implementing vulnerability management. So the first and foremost challenge comes here, that is lack of resources. Resources over here we mean human resources, lack of enough investments in procuring new vulnerability management tools, and as well as lack of right tools in place. All these constraints put mid-sized enterprises in a place where they are really finding it hard to implement vulnerability management. Let us take a look at the next challenge now. The next challenge is irregular vulnerability scans. The moment we say they don't have enough tools and enough resources to run a process, this leads to irregular process itself. That means instead of running continuous and ongoing vulnerability scans and vulnerability management process, organizations tend to make the whole process is irregular and it becomes like a periodic fashion. So what happens over here is instead of running a specific vulnerability scanning process on a day-to-day basis, organizations tend to perform it in a quarterly or monthly fashion. So this irregular vulnerability scans are often not a good thing for any enterprises, whether it is large or small, and it really puts organizations' businesses under risk. This is one other major challenge faced by small medium enterprises today. Let us take a look at the third challenge. Third challenge is delay in patching and longer remediation interval. So if we look at small medium businesses in general, there are people who use multiple tools and open source vulnerability management tools to handle the whole vulnerability management process. Since there are multiple tools involved in the whole process, there is a delay in shifting between one tool to another tool, which naturally creates huge delay and a lot of security gaps. And there are another set of audience where they feel that vulnerability management ends with vulnerability scanning itself. So, after detecting and discovering vulnerabilities, they don't go ahead and do the next step itself. That is, they don't consider remediation as an important step itself. So, in that case, the remediation either happens in a delayed interval or it doesn't happen at all. So, this is one other important challenge faced by small medium businesses in today's business scenario. And let us see the next challenge. And the next most important challenge is manual implementation of vulnerability management tasks. So, vulnerability management is not a one step process. There are a lot of tasks involved, starting from scanning of vulnerability, assessment of vulnerability, prioritization of vulnerabilities, and remediation of them. So, all these tasks, if implemented manually, it takes a lot of time and it makes the whole vulnerability management process a tedious one and increase the whole complexity. So, taking the manual route for executing vulnerability management is a very difficult thing, and this is also one other important challenge faced by small medium businesses today. So now we saw like these are the major challenges which are pulling down the vulnerability management process in small medium businesses, and it clearly states that there is a need for one right solution which can automate the end-to-end vulnerability management task and can help small medium businesses. So before we look at how SanerNow automates vulnerability management from end to end, let us quickly take a look at the benefits of automating vulnerability management. So, the first most benefit of automating vulnerability management is automation saves time, resources, and as well as the effort spent on manual tasks. The moment we are going to automate everything, you're going to save a lot of time as well as in place of utilizing three or four manual resources, you can just get the whole process done with one resource, and you can also reduce the manual efforts spent on the whole vulnerability management task. This is one major advantage of automatically managing vulnerabilities in your network. So now moving to the next benefit, automation makes the entire process continuous and it eliminates the security gaps. The moment you implement an automation framework in your network, vulnerability management is going to be a seamless process. You can easily schedule the vulnerability management process right from scanning to remediation, and this process will be happening continuously in the background without interrupting the users, and this whole process will become a continuous one. So, this is also one other important benefit of automating vulnerability management. Now, let us take a look at the third important benefit of vulnerability management automation. So, the moment you automate, the entire vulnerability management approach becomes a proactive one and it also minimizes the attack surface. How I'm able to explain this to you with the help of an example. In the recent days, there are a lot of cyber attacks, even including WannaCry, for which where the vulnerability was released and the patch was released long back, but security teams have failed to patch the vulnerability with relevant patches. And during the time of the attack, going and scanning for the vulnerabilities and then trying to patch them is not the right approach at all. And with proper automation in place, you would have done the process continuously. That is, you would have done regular vulnerability scans and you would have patched the vulnerabilities on time. So thus you're proactive and you don't have to struggle on the D day when the attack occurs. So automation surely makes the uh, whole process efficient, and it also makes you proactive in handling cyber attacks and reduces the attack surface. So these are the three major benefits of automating vulnerability management. And now looking at the tool which will help you automate the end-to-end vulnerability management task, we have SanerNow for you, and we have Smita with us who is going to show you how to automate the end-to-end vulnerability management right from detection to remediation. Over to you, Smita.
Thanks, Dikshita. Can you please confirm my screen visibility? Yeah, I hope it is visible.
Yes, Smita, we can see your screen. Yeah.
Okay. I totally agree with what Dikshita says. I think it is really important that we mitigate the detected vulnerabilities on a daily basis to secure our systems. So, for as a solution, I'll be now going through how SanerNow will automatically detect these vulnerabilities, assess it, mitigates it, and shows us the report. So SanerNow vulnerability management works on agent server model where agents are installed in all the devices across the network. So for that, I have already installed few of the devices in this account so that I can directly pitch in and show you how we can automate the vulnerability management. To know how to install the devices, we have already created few demos before. You can just have a look at it before. Um, for now, all these accounts that I have installed in my device, so it depends on how, yeah, we install, and all these devices is are falls into a group, and each device in these accounts will be associated with the group, and each group will have some certain settings. So before that, we will know how to automate the first step, that is how to automate the vulnerability scanning. To talk about scanning, there are organizations that rely on vulnerability scanning, which will be on a weekly basis, monthly, or even at worst, it will be on a yearly basis. So, seeing the increasing number of vulnerabilities on a daily basis, it is really important for us to scan the devices on a daily basis so that we detect these vulnerabilities and mitigate. To do that, Saner now has integrated the agents or designed the agents in a way that scan happens automatically on a daily basis. But scan can also be scheduled according to the user requirements. So for these devices, we can apply configurations to actually schedule the scan. So to schedule the scan, user can traverse to the manage settings page, and once user opens the settings page, you'll be able to see the default settings. So all the agents, once it is installed and falls into any of the group depending on the operating system, by default, we will be pushing the default settings to the agents. So all the agents with default settings will automatically scan the devices depending on the schedule that we have set. So the schedule will be at 12 p.m. on a daily basis. That is, on every day at 12 p.m., our vulnerability scans will happen in the agents. If in case user wants to customize these settings, user will also be able to customize these settings. So to do that, user can come into the settings page back and click on the create settings. So here, again, once you click on the schedule, user can change the timings for the settings and create a new setting. So here you can apply these settings to a group of devices. So you can select any number of devices for this and create. So once the creation is successful, what happens to the settings? So that the settings from the server will be pushed to each of the devices in the groups that are fallen into this settings, and from then the agents will scan automatically on the set time. So there is where on a daily basis scans will be scheduled, or it will be automated. So the vulnerability scanning can be automated on a daily basis. So after scanning is successful, so what happens? The scan, all the collected information will be sent to the server. All the agents will send the vulnerability collected informations to the server, and user will be able to view those settings in the device section, individual device page, as well as in the consolidated vulnerability management dashboard. For now, I'll show you how vulnerability details that are collected by the agents will be visible in the device page. So once user clicks on the host name, you'll be able to see the individual vulnerability management dashboard and click on the vulnerabilities. So here, if you see, all the scan data is uploaded, and these many vulnerabilities are present for the system that I have selected. Similarly, we will also display the missing configurations that are present in the system, and we display the vulnerability and missing patches here. The next thing is, as I said, there are all these data. This will be of one device data, but all the data will be consolidated and displayed in the vulnerability management dashboard. So here, this dashboard will give an overall picture of how many vulnerabilities are collected across this account. To view the vulnerability management dashboard, user just have to click on the S icon and click on the vulnerability management, so that the consolidated dashboard will be displayed. So this is how the dashboard looks. So one important thing is that SanerNow assesses all these vulnerabilities, and it gives us a lot of information about the vulnerabilities present in the system. For example, here you can see that about 3,763 vulnerabilities have been detected from the 5 hosts that are installed in this account. So if you see here, there are vulnerable devices. Uh, so the device based number of assets and the risk counts will be displayed in this section. For example, QA Win 7 will be having around 2,265 risk count for 13 assets. So depending on this, user will be able to see the vulnerability count depending on the host name. So the next is on the vulnerabilities. So depending on the vulnerability ID, we will display all the vulnerabilities, and also the severity for each vulnerability will be displayed, so that it says that it is very critical and to the number of hosts that are affected. We also bifurcate and show vulnerabilities by operating system. For example, if user wants to know how many vulnerabilities are present for just Microsoft Windows 7 operating system, user will be able to see through graph or even through downloading the CSV. We also display it by group for easy view, and also on the vulnerability aging basis. Vulnerability aging is wherein how long the vulnerability has been present in the account. We also show the top vulnerabilities or top vulnerable assets, wherein it says that the asset with high risk should be mitigated on priority. So top remediation recommendations are also provided for the ease of remediation or mitigation. So this is how SanerNow will assess it and displays the complete information. Next is the vulnerability prioritization. So SanerNow automatically prioritizes also. As you can see, the prioritization also happens as part of the display of the vulnerabilities here. So it automatically prioritizes the assets based on the severity range. So depending on the severity scoring, we also group these vulnerabilities and display the vulnerable assets here. So if you see here, the CVSS, depending on the CVSS scoring, this is critical, high, medium, and low vulnerabilities are neatly shown, so that user will know which which all assets or which all vulnerable assets should be mitigated on priority. So we always recommend that we mitigate all the severity assets, but for at first the critical should be given most priority is where it is saying. The next is on the exploitability. So it also alarms the user that how easily the vulnerability present in your account will exploit. So the easily exploitable, it gives a percentage wherein how many of the vulnerabilities in your account will be utilized to easily exploit your devices. So similarly with the network exploitable, about 62.05% of the vulnerabilities present in this account are network exploitable vulnerabilities. Similarly with the public exploitable vulnerabilities. And if you can see here, about 91.39% are high lateral moment vulnerabilities. That means when if a system is already compromised, so attacker will easily get the access to all the devices in the system in across your network. So that means the attacker can easily exploit all the devices in your network, which is very, very critical. So in this way, the vulnerability management dashboard will alarm the user, or it will alert the user to remediate it on priority. We also show the high fidelity attacks. So that means depending on the malware, depending on the MVT that we generate, SanerNow generates, we display the actually how many devices are exploitable across this account. For example, you might know that there are many malwares that are available. Like for example, recently WannaCry was there. So we tell the users that these are the vulnerabilities that are present and they are exploitable to the malwares that are present present in the network. So this will say that the user should and must remediate all these assets on priority. Now that we saw all the vulnerabilities that are present in this account, the next step or the critical step is to mitigate these vulnerabilities. So how do we mitigate these vulnerabilities? SanerNow comes with an integrated patch management tool that can be accessed by clicking on this S icon and click on the patch management PM icon here. So this patch management will also display all the patches that are associated with the vulnerable assets. For example, if you can see here in the security patches section, for a device, there are about 74 patches, and for the vulnerable assets, about 74 patches should be applied to make it non-vulnerable. If you can see here, each asset will have the severity, the severity count for each of the asset here, so that user will know that which priority it can be mitigated. So now let's just dive in and see how we can automate to mitigate these vulnerabilities. To do that, if you can see here in the right section, that is automation, click on the automation. So here in automation, so automation is it is a technique wherein you can create the remediation task and just forget it. Everything will be handled automatically. Here in automation page, all the assets, whether it is vulnerable or non-vulnerable, will be displayed in this section. Non-vulnerable in the sense, if the non-vulnerable asset, even in future, if it becomes vulnerable, our automation task will automatically take care of it. You can also group the assets that are displayed based on the asset source, also with the asset family that are listed here. User can select a single or any number of assets here in this section and click on Create Automation Rule. So once you click on Create Automation Rule, you'll be able to see the patching options. So here, as I previously told, that we always insist on remediating the vulnerabilities for all the criticality ranges. But here, in case user wants to just for initially just wants to select critical or high, user can deselect the other options. And also, there is a patch installation type where users can select security patches and non-security patches. So wherein in patches we have two different sections, which says security patches, more of it will fall under the most critical updates or the cumulative updates to the system. So all these falls under the security patches, and the other non-important patches will fall under the non-security patches. So user can select any one of this. And the next is the future assets. So future assets are something which will include the upcoming assets also for patching. For example, there's a new application that is installed in your device. After creation of this automation task, then our automation will automatically consider that application, and in future, if the installed application is vulnerable, the automation task that you create will automatically remediate it. So it is like there is no hassle, and there's no user intervention to come and select the new assets that are installed in your device. So next, once you click on next, you will be able to schedule your automation. So when does this automation really should work, or when will it start? So automation by default, it will be after schedule scan. As I said, after schedule scan happens on a daily basis. So a schedule scan will happen on a daily basis depending on our settings. So after the schedule scan happens, our automation automatically starts. The next is daily, wherein you can start your automation task on a daily basis with one start and end time. Also weekly, wherein in week we can also further select which week of the month or which day in the week can be selected. Similarly to the month, which week and which day of the month can be selected. Even on specific dates, we can run the automation task. For example, if every month 15th a remediation should run, so that also can be customized. We can also automate how we can schedule the rebooting. So if any patch requires rebooting, for example, there might be some assets which really requires a reboot. So after remediation, we can also set the reboot options, wherein after the successful remediation, reboot will automatically reboot once this option is selected. Whereas if scheduled reboot time is selected, if user does not want to reboot at working hours, user can also select this during the non-working hours. So there is where the scheduled reboot time option comes into picture. So the next comes is the pre-remediation script and post-remediation script. So we allow uploading scripts so that before the remediation, if there are any registry changes or any GPO settings to be done before any patching or after patching, we will be able to upload those scripts in these sections, and our automation tasks will consider these scripts and run before or after the remediation. Then user can provide the task name and any patching activity, that notification if it is required for the user. Although it is not mandatory, user can be provided with a notification or an alert that the remediation task will be starting at so and so hours. So even after complete remediation is done, we will be notifying the user from the post patching activity notification. So in the groups to apply, so now as I told you, this automation all the assets will be displayed in the automation section, but the automation works group based. So group based, you can select the groups so that any device that falls under this group will get the automation task. So user can just create the automation rule. So you'll be able to see that it has been successfully created. Yeah, so once the rule is created, you will be able to see which device of the group has received the job, and you will be able to see the complete status once it receives and starts the remediation. So this is how the complete the automation of how vulnerability can be mitigated can be done in a very easy way using SanerNow. Now that we know we have done all these things, but at the next point is that we have to pull in these reports. So how many vulnerabilities got mitigated last week, from last week? How many vulnerabilities were detected in the last week? So all these we can get it through the reports. So we have a reporting feature in SanerNow. To view that, in the left section, if you go to report section, click on the report section. So in here, we provide two types of reporting. One is the built-in reports that we already have. So built-in reports are something that we already have created for the user, and user can just access it. So they are called as canned reports, and all these canned reports will be listed depending on the service provisions selected by the user. For now, we'll go to vulnerability report, which is already created. If you see here, all the details that are collected are neatly graphed and displayed to the user so that it will be easy for the analysis of the vulnerability. So these are by default available reports. For example, if user wants to create new report, and depending on own requirements, user can click on create new report. Here we have a list of vulnerability management APIs related. We have reports, API reports, wherein user can just click on it and user will be able to see the data. This is how user can just click and you'll be able to see the data, or you can create your own reports. You can also search these by giving some of the keywords, just like high fidelity attacks, and you'll be able to create your own report. So once you create your report, you can save it. If you want to mail, then and there, you will be able to mail it to any of the user, just providing the email address. Also, the reports can be downloaded then and there using the PDF format. And then the important part that comes is backing up of these reports, right? So backing up is very important. So once you click on the save option, you will be able to back up these reports. So how the backup happens and when it happens? So backup happens on daily or weekly basis. So we keep the latest. We also have customizable keeping the latest reports. For example, if the last 10 latest reports will be present, and you will be able to get these reports on a daily basis through your mail. So weekly also we'll be able to schedule it depending on the number of days that user selects. User can also customize the latest reports, providing the backup time, any time that is user requires, and giving the email address. The organization also, there are ways to pull in the reports to different organization or to different accounts, and then just save the report. Once this is done, you will be able to save the reports, and through your mail you'll be able to get the reports, and this will happen for both the canned reports as well as the customized reports. This is how SanerNow will automate the complete vulnerability management process. That's all from my side. Over to you, Dikshita.
Thank you, Smita. That was a very insightful and detailed demo. So now we are going to the last section of today's webinar, and we will be discussing the questions here. If you have any questions, please raise it to us and we will be happy to take up your questions. We have a question for you here, Smita. Can we automate vulnerability scanning for all network devices?
Hello. Yeah. SanerNow agents, yes, Dikshita, will be able to do that. So SanerNow agent installed across the endpoints, it'll take the role of scanning other devices as well. So the automation will work for scanning all the network devices.
That's very interesting. So, as you said, this agent is taking the role of network scanner as well. So, we will also save the usage of any additional hardware, and we can also save investments on procuring any new hardware. This is a very good benefit from Saner now. And yes, we can also automate vulnerability scanning on all network devices. I think we have another question also for us. Can we
Okay.
automate and receive alerts if a critical vulnerability is detected?
Yes, we have alerting option, wherein we can subscribe to those alerts depending on the service provisions. For example, in the vulnerability management, we can subscribe to those alerts, and user will be able to get the critical vulnerabilities or just the high fidelity attacks or all of the vulnerabilities that are detected across the account. We have the alerting feature also.
That's very interesting, Sweta. So, if you guys have any questions, please do let us know and we will be happy to take up the questions. You can also send the questions to us to our support email address. We will be happy to answer your questions there as well. I think we are done with the questions for today's session. And once again, thank you everyone. Thank you for joining this session. We will keep you posted on our upcoming webinars. If you're interested in any specific topic, please do let us know and we will be happy to take it up and present it for you. Thank you all once again.